Oh, we're live. Hi, it's Mike in Mind. I'm Hudson Hotz.
And I'm the mind. Okay, not really. I'm Scotty B.
Yeah.
And I'm Allen Wagner.
Our
He's the
therapist.
doctor.
Yeah, he's the therapist. We
In,
really
in
should have
case
had
you in case you were ever confused, which I don't think would ever happen.
it right. And that's my husband. For years, everybody thought Scotty was my husband.
Isn't
So
that weird?
it just to clarify, because somebody just recently asked me that. Wow,
Yeah.
so great to see you and your husband back on the radio again. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
first of all, we're not on the radio. We were on the radio. We're doing a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
And we did. We brought my husband, Alan,
Yeah.
and they were like in shock that it wasn't you. And it was like, wow, like 30 years later, you're gonna like, really?
I remember we had to say that several times on the air. We are married, but not to each other. Would you think
Correct.
I would talk to my spouse like this, or she would talk to her spouse like this?
Right.
Well,
Alan,
you guys squabble like an old married couple sometimes, so I can understand that.
could you
I can
imagine if
understand
we
that.
were in a business together? Oh my gosh, I don't even know
Ugh,
how that would work.
yeah.
Yeah, but that was, by the way, can I just go back? That was a fun episode last week, going back with Adam Sachs, talking about Dog the Bounty Hunter, Ed Hardy and Von
Yeah.
Dutch. And if you missed that episode, it'll take you back. It'll make you think about some of those old club days back in 2001. For
Yeah,
real.
I didn't know the story behind his connection with Ed Hardy. And so that was great. I was learning as we went there. I don't think we even touched on some of that when we had him in
No.
Hawaii to talk on the show.
I don't even think Alan even knew what the Von Dutch brand was back in the day. I don't know, because Alan, that's not Alan's. Alan's very
So,
conservative.
yeah, I'm not a style person and I'm not that trendy, but no, I mean Von Dutch, I always associate that with Paris Hilton for some weird reason. I just remember her
Oh
wearing a
yeah,
big trucker hat.
yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
episode. Go back and listen. And again, be sure and like and subscribe. And at the end of every episode, we forgot last time.
yeah.
First in story, it's called FIS, and we're gonna give you a shout out, a name drop, your Instagram handle. So be sure and give our accounts a follow if you'd like to keep up and know when we're dropping a new episode. We're Mike in Mind on all platforms, Instagram. Yeah, but I thought we would talk about something that I think is very top of mind for a lot of people right now.
Okay.
And here Scotty and I are, right? We both moved to North Carolina unplanned. We did not plan this. We didn't know that this was happening, that Scotty was living here and I was buying a home here with Alan. But the cost of living was just going up in Los Angeles, okay?
Hmm.
And my salary kept coming down. It was incredible. It shouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah.
But I feel like everyone, and I'm sure Alan, you're a therapist and you must hear a lot of this going on. People are having to find side hustles, right? So I wanted to talk about the reinvention hustle today and how, at our age, it's a scary thing to reinvent yourself. But am I right? Like, Alan, are people talking about side hustles and
Oh
stuff?
yeah. I think, look, especially the people who are still in Los Angeles, I think there's been a lot of migration that has happened probably over the last couple of years. But for people who are still there, family, friends, whatever's going on with them, their kids, it's hard. And if you're living in a big city right now and taxes are high and it's not an easy situation. And if you can't leave, you got to make more money. And so, yeah, everybody's looking to figure out, do I drive for Uber? Do I, kind of shill my expert stuff on Upwork? But yeah, people are really looking for side hustles, and a lot of people are losing their jobs too. So if you have a side hustle started, you can actually make that your main hustle.
Scotty, when did you leave Hawaii? What year did you leave Hawaii?
Uh, Gosh, what was 2.5 years ago?
Okay, how much was milk then?
Yeah. Milk actually had gone down and then it went back
Really?
up
Oh,
because, we had all the stores that started rolling in. And
yeah.
so you were able to get the Costco or Sam's Club or whatever. But yeah, I mean, at one point it was $7, $8 a
And how
gallon.
much was a box of cereal? Like a small box of cereal.
Man, that was similarly priced. Yeah. I mean,
Seven, eight
obviously,
bucks.
obviously
Alan,
you
for a
got
box of
this.
cereal.
You could
That's
get the
crazy.
store brand stuff cheaper, the
Yeah, like the
Safeway
Safeway.
Select or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. But again,
No,
like,
but on your point, Hudson, I think, I saw some article and for people who are listening to this, about people above the age of 40 and how much they have in their retirements. And I think this has really, really drained retirements, whether it's 401ks or people having to sort of put things on their credit cards. You're seeing a lot of people who are not ready to retire the way they were maybe 20 years ago or so. And so I think it's becoming a side hustle economy. You have to almost have two jobs. I don't know that many people who are not doing more than one job right now.
Or people that retire and end up going back to work
Very true.
because
Yeah. There's a
reality
lot
slaps in the
of
face.
that. There is a lot of that
Yeah.
going on. And it's scary because even like for us, right? I mean, we're Scotty and I, this is all we know is radio. That's all we've done our entire lives. I mean, and it's a scary thing because that industry is going away. You
Yeah.
know, people, I know myself, and I hate to say this because it's the love of our lives. Like I don't envision myself ever doing anything else because my love is connecting, you know, through conversations and music and sharing those connections and concerts. And, you know, I can't imagine it disappearing, but it is in a different way where it's now all digital. Like right now, people are streaming our podcast off their phone. They're getting in their car right now. Hi guys, don't worry, we're gonna give you that shout out later. But they're still getting into it, but they're doing it not by going to the dial in
Yep.
their car. Like I have a
Yeah.
newer car, my car is brand new. I don't have a radio dial. I have a screen and it's all apps. Everything is an app. Connect to my CarPlay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I started in broadcasting when I was 16 years old,
Yep.
and it was very prominent, and it was very local, and for many, many years it continued to stay that way. And then as the satellite stuff came along and the digital stuff came along, some companies morphed and became, like iHeart is an example that you and I were
Yeah.
both part of. They got ahead of it and created the iHeart app, which does bring local, market radio stations to you. However, at
Yep.
the same time, they've been working on basically syndicating programs and sending the same programs to all of these markets. So you're really not getting that local taste like you would want.
Right. And that was something that our friends in Hawaii and I've heard this over the years, ever since that, you know, we were separated, was that we were a very, very large part of the local community. We were out, we were in front of everybody's faces. I mean, it was our home and everybody felt it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Mhm.
really excited. Like next week, Scotty and I are going to sit down and do an article for Midweek. That was our publication. What page were you on, by the way? I kid.
Oh, we'll have to discuss that during the interview.
Yeah, we will. We will.
There's a
But
story behind that.
yeah, we will. But this going back to the side hustles, and I thought about it because here I gave up my career of 29 years. It was my dream to be on that radio station, as you know, Scotty, out in Los Angeles. And I did it. I had number one ratings, but the pay, and like again, every year it would go down, cost of living going up. Just to live in Hawaii, just to own my home, to pay the insurance and my property tax, $50,000 right off the top. Who can freaking afford that? Who?
Yeah.
No,
Right?
I'm hearing more and more people are seeing that it's actually better to rent than own homes these days. Maybe it's the interest rates or depreciation or just if, especially in a place like California, or Hawaii, I'm not sure about, but I'll just say for California, people by the time you're in property taxes and you're in insurance and you're in mortgage and you're in utilities, you really got to be a millionaire. And
So
so very
you,
different
you
world.
do. But side hustles right now is where it's at. And I brought up the whole radio thing and where it's going because it's changing. Everything's changing. And with AI taking over, people are losing a lot of jobs. UPS, I just saw Amazon, you know. People are going to have to start reinventing themselves. And I thought today would be a good day to like talk about some of these side hustles that people are doing. Like there's a lot of cool side hustles
Oh
out
yeah.
For
there.
example, what?
For example, one of the side hustles people are doing right now is thrifting. They're going to Goodwill and they're finding these vintage t-shirts. Okay. Like, for example, there was an old Nirvana t-shirt that somebody just snagged at a Goodwill that was just sold for $30,000. It was
Wow.
one of the first Nirvana t-shirts. right?
In in my studio here, I have a home studio. That's where I'm doing this. Just across behind the studio desk here, there's a closet, and it is loaded with finds from thrift stores because the
Stop it.
idea my wife had was to start an Etsy store
Mhm.
or do eBay.
Yeah.
And we actually have the name of it, which I won't say because we haven't launched it yet.
And don't.
But
We
it
always give away our ideas and people do them.
but that's exactly the idea as because we love thrifting.
Thrifting, Alan, I've dragged Alan. Alan will go with me and I'll go and I'll look for these crazy cool t-shirts, concert. I'm a fan of the concert t-shirts. And again, look at that one person's getting $30,000. I mean, that was a
Yeah.
you're not going to expect to
Well,
get $30,000.
I mean, I remember, do you guys remember that movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Oh yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
remember the Jonah Hill character had a sell it on eBay store, and people would come in and bring their stuff in, and he would sell it on eBay. And it was so ahead of its time because that literally is what everybody's doing these days is
And
selling
they
on
actually had those stores where you could bring in your stuff
eBay.
and basically cut in the person who did the actual posting and selling and shipping.
Yep.
So yeah, it was
Yeah.
exactly like that.
Right. But so again, but now you wanted to think Etsy and or an eBay store, the way you really sell it, unfortunately, and I'm not, I just started our Mike and Mind page on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok person. Like I've only done Instagram and I'll post on Facebook, but TikTok, you can actually sell right off of TikTok. When I signed up our account, I saw these girls showing these handbags that they just bought at like thrift stores and they were selling them. They're holding them up live at the store. And if you
Mm.
want to purchase it, you can purchase it right now for 29.99. Even though it was going to be 5.99 for them, get it now, include shipping, and you have to just hit whatever
No, I think
right
the
off of
clothing is
TikTok.
definitely a good side hustle for people, and it's not for everyone. You really have to be able to find that diamond in the rough. Someone like Hudson can see something and know the value of it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
personally. I don't know about you, Scotty. If I walked into Goodwill, I wouldn't know what was worth anything and what wasn't. But she knows those vintage things. But what other kinds of things can people do if they're just looking outside of their regular job? Maybe they haven't gotten a raise in a while. Maybe they're not getting bonuses anymore, or maybe they're just kind of, taking reductions. And as the prices go up, their income is going down in their field, which is a lot of fields. And you mentioned AI. I mean, I don't think people realize just how many fields that's going to affect, whether that's PR fields, marketing fields, graphic design fields, on top of just
Definitely
the
the
film
graphic design field.
industry. Oh yeah, I don't know if everybody's heard this on Spotify. You've got that Spotify AI DJ. So, as you guys were talking earlier about radio, it's really sad because I think people like that connection to people and it's transferring into podcasting or talk radio. I think those are the two formats now where you can hear a human being that's real for a while and having a conversation that you can maybe resonate with. But
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, there's so many things happening right now with AI, and there's so many things happening that are forcing people to, their expenses aren't coming down, but their income is, and they've got to find a way to make it work as opposed to just,
It's funny. Just a side note on AI. I have someone I know. They had to write up a document to send to a property manager, and they read the thing to me, and I was like, "Wow, this is really amazing." And I know they had consulted a lawyer at one point, but this wasn't from the lawyer. She said she wrote the stuff and then let AI fix it. And it sounded like a lawyer. It
You
was
know what?
amazing.
Okay, not gonna lie. When I wrote up our little bio for Mike in Mind, I wrote it out and then I let Chat GPT do the corrections. They made it
Yeah.
amazing. And they've even done the cartoon characters of us that you're seeing, whenever we do a posting on the Mike and Mind page and through
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook. And I'm not mad because it's not costing me anything.
Yeah.
We're not
But there are
making
a
money
lo-
on this.
but there are a lot of jobs going away because of it. You're exactly right.
exactly.
What else can we do to make some money, Hudson?
I mean, these are basic things that I'm sure people have thought about at some point, but even like if you could go out and purchase a $3,000 little SUV, something inexpensive, maybe has 100,000 miles. I know friends that are doing Turo. Do you know what that is?
No.
Yes, I heard about this right before I left Hawaii, and it was a huge thing because during the pandemic,
Yeah.
if you remember,
Yes.
rental cars were so expensive when we were coming out of the pandemic
Yeah.
because what had happened, and I don't know if you saw the pictures, Hudson, but imagine Aloha Stadium, which is now
Massive.
being been torn down. But the whole parking lot was full of rental cars because no one could rent cars anymore, so they just parked them out there. Now, as things started to open back up, they didn't have access to all the cars. So that's when really Toro really started to take off. Explain this
Well,
to Alan.
okay, so I have a friend who does this. My friend had to do some traveling. She's a professional makeup artist, and she had to go back and work in Canada. And she had just purchased this car, a very expensive car payment, $1,000 a month. And she's like, gosh, if I'm going to be gone for a month, it could possibly be 2 months. I should maybe get somebody to take care of this car payment. And somebody had recommended she list her vehicle on Turo. She parks the car in a lot with the key or somebody. And basically, you'll go on the Turo app and say, I need the car from this date to that date. And they come, contactless. They'll get the car, they'll put it back, and they rent the car for like, the hundred and whatever dollars it is a day.
Yeah.
And and then they park it back in. And it's amazing. Like they're making like an extra $3,000 a month. So then because of that, she had told another friend, so they went out and bought a beater, like an old SUV, like a Kia little thing that was $3,000. Dude is now making 5 grand a month just off of that. Now he's going to buy another car. It's because during busy seasons, depending upon where you live, like all of us here live on the intercoastal, we live on the intercoastal. So there's a busy summer season. I mean, I think we should go pick up a little, $3,000 car, babe.
Yeah. No, I
I'm
mean,
sure there's some limitations on the quality of the car and how much you can charge and insurance and all
Right.
these different things.
I
So
don't think you could have something with the bumper like duct taped up. That was a big one in Hawaii.
it's a
No duct tape.
it's a risk it for the biscuit thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure there's also going to be people coming down on this business because you know how the taxi industry went after Uber and all of that as well. But
Yeah.
here's the thing about Turo is it's kind of like Uber, but you don't have to waste your time driving people around.
yep.
Yeah. They rent it.
Yeah.
Look, I think people are doing that with their homes even in certain markets
Oh
right now.
yeah.
Like if you can get a huge amount renting your home and you just move into an apartment, that's passive income too, and that you add to your salary. So I think people are finding creative ways, but you're right. I mean, that Turo is a great idea, and I can definitely speak to you.
Even people are getting creative if they've got a yard, okay, and they live sort of in a, like on the outskirts of suburbia, they're renting garden space out where you can plant your own garden, which is an amazing thing. You set up these planting boxes, and each one is dedicated to, and this person spends $25 a month, but you get your own garden box and you can do whatever you like. You can grow your vegetables, you can
Mm.
grow whatever. It's $25 for this space, 50 for this, 100 if you want to have some chickens. But people, that's another creative ideal is selling out space in your yard. Don't even poo-poo it, Scotty. I know your wheels are turning now. You're thinking about it.
Well,
Maybe.
no, I've got the space that I'm not using. I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I going to make money on this deal? Yeah, but I think urban gardens are a huge thing. When people
Yep.
go in and they'll put aside some land and they'll parcel it off, off to individuals. I know Honolulu had a lot of that going on.
Oh yeah.
But for the big cities, that sounds like a great idea. Just
Yep.
if you're a suburbanite.
A
Yeah,
lot
no,
of
it's another good one.
I won't speak to every field, but a lot of therapists, the way that we work as a therapist is that we're licensed in a certain state. And so for me personally, I'm licensed in California and North Carolina. But if I was to see someone in another country or another state, I can convert my business to coaching. And so that's a way for me to expand my business as well, because I'm not legally allowed to do therapy, let's say in Texas or Florida or in England or something like that. But I can coach people and do the same basic technique, but just call it coaching. And so I think sometimes you can look outside of what you do, what your expertise is, and figure out, okay, well, how can I transfer that into something else that somebody will pay for? Because I think everyone has expertise in their life. And so I'm seeing coaching becoming a big deal, whether that's about every kind of coaching, really. But I don't know what you guys think of that. Have you heard about
So,
it?
Alan, let me ask you this. I know that in law, you
Mhm.
have to be, licensed in each because each and every state might have different laws.
Yep.
Does this imply that in counseling, there's different methods that are approved and aren't approved? Why is it a different license?
Mm.
It's interesting. There's a national
Yeah,
exam.
this is so strange.
Yeah, I passed the national exam, so you would think that that would allow me to nationally be able to see people. But I think every state has a different law and ethics. There's smaller little, caveats to each state on, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. They're very similar. I think in the case of California, they were kind of not that nice to people in the beginning about letting people have reciprocity. So a lot of states went the other way against California. So they have reciprocity with one another. And then it depends on your degree. If you're a social worker, for example, I think you can cross state lines, but if you're an MFT, you have to get licensed per state. So I think it's something that it's not that different really how you would do it, but there are small subtleties of, what you need to do to maintain your license and continuing education. So I understand, but the coaching thing is something that almost every therapist I know is doing because it's allowing them to go into Connecticut or into Toronto or
Yeah.
because a lot of times there's a lack in a lot of markets for therapy.
Yeah.
And especially for couples counseling, not everybody has couples counselors in their area. So it's been interesting since COVID because it has allowed me as a therapist in California or North Carolina to go into almost any city in California as opposed to just Los Angeles or just where I live in North Carolina. But on top of that, it allows you to go into every state. So if you're good at something and you know how to do something that someone else doesn't know how to do, it's a great opportunity to make some extra money as a side hustle if you
And
can.
I would say as well, I see a lot of this with YouTube channels because I don't know how many times I've learned to do something by going on and
On
saying,
YouTube, I was
I,
just about to say
Oh
this.
yeah.
I need to learn how to do the servicing for my John Deere lawn
Right.
tractor. And you
Yep.
just go on and you find the guy who's speaking the way that you understand.
Yep.
And if he has good camera angles, some guys are characters, and you look at the followers, it's amazing. You
Yeah,
can,
and you always
and
go back to that. You're like, I remember that. I'm going to follow this guy because he has, he shows automotive hacks or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
I
Changing
mean,
oil or
and I believe that you can make a lot of money on YouTube based on the amount of people. Once you now you're not going to make that from the very get-go. Just FYI, that's not going to happen. It's going to take a long time for you to build up that following and build that stream up. And I don't know what the count is in order before you can start making money.
well,
But
that's
even if you are a mechanic, that's a big one, or you're a plumber, you
yeah.
could have your
but
own little channel on YouTube for that.
But to your point, Hudson, I think that's what we're talking about as side hustles, is that if you're going to build something on YouTube or you're going to build a podcast or you're going to build, any of these types of things on social media platforms, you have to understand that that's not a primary job. Like we still all have to do our regular jobs, pay our bills, but it's a nice way to stopgap things. It's a nice way to have extra money for vacations or extra money to go out to dinner. And I think, that's something that in the past we all could go to the movies without even thinking about it or go to a nice restaurant. And now you have to sort of give it a little bit of pause, a little bit of
Yeah.
thought. And so these are
Yeah,
great side hustles. But I think, I always say to Hudson, just throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And
yeah.
I always
I,
do that in everything. And I've always done that as an entrepreneur.
I think the with YouTube, it also needs to be your creativity and not like you'll see the reactors,
Yeah.
which I actually really enjoy a lot of the reactors, but they're using someone else's
Uh-huh.
talent and ability, and
Right.
sometimes it's hard to monetize
Yep.
because depending on how you show the video or what approvals you got to watch that movie or whatever. So if it's something that you can create and build from nothing,
Yeah.
then people are probably more apt to monetize and want to come in and sponsor you.
My friend Fancy Nancy. She pays somebody. I mean, she literally pays a person to come in and organize her pantry and her closets. Now, okay, that's Fancy Nancy. Obviously, I call her
Hey,
Fancy.
with a small kid in the house, Fancy Nancy has a completely different meaning because
Yeah,
there's a kid show called Fancy Nancy.
hilarious.
Yeah, so but I know what you're saying. It's her name's not really Fancy Nancy.
No, it's really not. But, and I mean, and again, she's just not great at organization. That's just not her specialty. And so maybe you're somebody who has a really keen knack of organizing. There are people that are doing that. There's people that will let you say, go through your closet, and go through your wardrobe and say, ditch,
Yeah.
ditch, a
Yeah.
classic, keep, and people pay for that.
Look at
Oh, yeah.
Maria Kondo.
There's people that
Yeah,
have pickup trucks, Hudson, right now
that's
that are
awesome.
using it as junk removal, you know? So exactly. So somebody with the closet thing is emptying it out, and how do you get the stuff out of your house? You know, then boom, you call the junk removal person, and that's
Yeah.
their side hustle. Good use of their Sierra when they're not actually driving it for work.
We're just trying to come up with great ideas that, are no brainers, but sometimes it takes a bunch of idiots to like talk about it and say, "Hey, what about the rent a friend where you could rent a friendship? Have you heard that? That's a thing."
I I have heard like a companionship thing. So
Yeah. I
it's
feel
not
like it's on the ver I sort of feel like it sounds a little escorty.
it's
Does it sound escorty to you?
it's about that
Yeah.
close.
No, I think there, I've seen those things where people, I've actually had clients that actually pay these women on these sugar daddy, sugar baby sites, if you guys have heard of those things. And they'll basically, it's not for sex. It's just for companionship, believe it or not. And so they just are lonely, lonely, wealthy people, and they just want someone to go out to dinner with, or someone to go to the movies with, or someone to go to an event with.
Are
And
you
so
sure nothing is going on? Like, because it starts out like that. Oh yeah, I'm just taking you to dinner.
I'm sure
Nothing.
there's a tier on the menu for different prices for different services,
Yeah,
Hudson.
I would think.
I would think. But I do know that there are people who do it in a non-sexual way because, look, for anyone who's listening to this too, that's the thing. As we started talking about radio and podcasting, people are lonely. A lot of people are not going out as much as they used to. They're not seeing human beings as much as they're used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I do think that there are times where it's like, okay, if I have money but I'm alone, what do I do with it? I want to go to a restaurant. I don't want to be the person at the restaurant
Rent
reading a book by myself.
rentafriend.com.
Yeah,
That's a real website.
I'm
Pull it
sure
up,
it is.
Scotty.
No,
Rent.
I
Oh,
believe you, but I'll tell you, it just reeks
it
of sadness.
feels.
It
I
it
know.
I if I can, when you go home and you leave this person that you paid to spend time with you,
Yeah.
it's got to add to the sadness, doesn't it?
I would think so, but it's again, I think everybody finds companionship in different ways,
Yeah.
whether it's just chatting online, but there's a lot of loneliness. And I mean, we could go in a totally different podcast for that, but I mean, let's stay focused, I guess, on the side hustle aspects of
Yeah,
it.
we're not going to the
And
loneliness, Alan.
no, I'm not going to take us there. Don't worry.
Don't take
But
us
I
there.
do
We don't want to
understand
go there.
that there's a lot of things people can do if you have talent at something, whether that's you're a person who's really great at editing or really good at, making certain types of things. I know for me, as Hudson knows, for website development, for, I'm as a side hustle for me, I'm writing some kids books. And,
Yeah, you wrote some
when
books.
I'm looking for illustrators, or if I'm looking someone for formatting, or if I'm looking for someone, to help me to say some, obviously ChatGPT can help too, but I'm on Upwork. And those people have regular jobs, but they have a side hustle. They're really good at formatting for books, or they're really good at doing illustrations for books. And it's a great way for them to make some extra money on the side. And so if you're listening to this and you have some tech talent, you don't underestimate the fact that there's people that are like me that don't know anything about TikTok and we need help. If you're on Upwork and you can help me launch something on TikTok, I'll probably pay you to do it
That's
because
where I was going with this. I was just about to say, Scotty, have you ever used Fiverr or Upwork?
I'm familiar with Fiverr, but see, here's the thing, and I'll ask you from the hiring side of things, Alan. It doesn't seem like it makes you a lot of money as the worker. Like you're really, uh, I don't know, cheapening yourself
yeah.
but you have to do a lot of it in order to really make a substantial amount of money. And then do you feel like you're doing it for the extra experience and to put something in your portfolio? Or do you feel like now you've weakened your ability to negotiate for more money? I don't know. I find that a
Yeah,
tricky
'cause
one.
it is sort of Alan, it is sort of cheap. Like, I mean, I went on there
Yeah,
to
no, I
hire
understand what
someone.
Scotty's saying. But I also think this goes to the fact that we're talking about side hustles, not primary. If you were going to be a primary person on Upwork and that was going to be your livelihood and it was only Upwork, then yeah, you'd have to do a lot because you are getting something maybe at 60 cents on the dollar, hypothetically. But let's say hypothetically, I'm really good at this stuff. It takes me 5, 10 minutes. I get paid, at my job a lot of money to do it. And now someone is asking me to do something that takes 5 minutes and they're going to pay me even 60 cents on the dollar. But that money can be used to take my kids to Disneyland or to go and do something. I think people are looking at it that way. But yeah, if you're a task rabbit or an Uber driver or an Upwork person full time, that's different. But I think if you're someone who's really good at stuff like that, and I'm good at assembling things, it's like why not go on TaskRabbit and make some side cash, assemble
Mm.
an IKEA furniture for someone
I mean,
or
again, yeah, like even if it's like $20 or whatever, you know
yeah.
what? I mean, there's a bunch of those sites and definitely worth checking into. You know, when Fabio was getting old, my dog Fabio, my little Brussels Griffon, he died at 19. Before he was really sick, and I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and this came up. She's like, maybe you want to talk to a pet psychic,
Hmm.
have a little conversation with a pet psychic, before he, passes on. I was like, what? And it is a thing. It really is. People will take a photo, they'll post it up on Etsy, and they consider themselves a pet psychic.
Wow.
Maybe they do have that talent, but people are going to those sites. And I mean, I never went there, just it was suggested to me, and I saw it on a list of some of the things that people are doing for side hustles, and this one came up, making a thing called Messages from Pets, and you get a pet psychic reading.
I don't know if anybody here is a Christopher Guest Spinal Tap fan, but if you've seen that movie Best in Show, it's like a mockumentary about this big dog festival that people take their dog to a dog therapist. And the therapist is interpreting how the dog is feeling shame and all this. It was the craziest thing when Parker Posey, if you know who she is, she plays
Yeah.
one of the owners of the pet and she's got these braces in the movie and it's hysterical. So if you get a chance to see Best in Show, but yeah, there's actually pet therapists. They actually will sit there and interpret what
Now,
the
is that a real thing, Alan? Is that
I
a real
believe it
job?
is. I believe it totally is a real thing.
So like
Okay.
you went to Pepperdine, okay, for
Yeah.
grad school. So does Pepperdine offer that? Like,
No,
sure.
I mean, it's funny because I used to in the beginning of my career write these letters for people, who had emotional support animals, for planes or for apartments and things like that. But you
Yeah.
really have to be an expert in animal therapy to be able to do that stuff and justify it. I don't do that stuff anymore. But if you were an expert in animals, again, if you're asking me personally, do I believe that there's a therapist that can interpret what the pet is really thinking? And I
Yep.
probably would say no. But to your point, pet psychics, pet therapists,
Yeah.
it's very creative the ways that people are making money right now. And
Well, yeah, but how, see, here's the thing. Gosh, we had psychics on our show so many times, this,
We did.
Hudson.
Yeah.
psychics can
And
be very real. I don't know about you guys. I mean, maybe
and
a different episode.
I am the biggest skeptic in the world,
Oh, he's
but
so yeah.
when it comes, you add it to pets, it just goes to a different level of skepticism because where's the accountability? How do you,
Prove it.
I mean, is there any way to know? I think it's to make the person feel better, to give them like a connection to their pet that they feel
Right.
like they have.
Correct.
I don't, I just,
Well, I mean, look, when
It's
you
just
read
like
more,
how people go to the YouTube channels to see their damn tarot horoscope because they're down in the dumps. They just broke up with that person and they want to hear reassurance that there's somebody either wanting them back or there's somebody new coming in. We've
yeah.
all done it. We've all been there. Your soulmate. Just come on. Like, I'm,
oh, I know. I've
right now.
always told people if you read horoscopes and don't just read your own, read anybody's horoscope, a different sign, it'll apply to you. I think we all kind of take those things in and we find a way to make it work for us. And we do
Yeah.
want optimism. We want something, a belief that something's going to get better. But I do think this side hustle economy is interesting because side hustles can become full-time jobs. And I think anybody who's working for a company is watching, there's no more watch when they lay you off. There's no more loyalty or anything like that. It's pretty nasty actually how corporations just get rid of people and they just look at the stock shares. They're not thinking of you as Scotty or Hudson. It's just employee 12473 or something like that. And it's
Hmm.
easy to just cut a salary or cut, something without even
He's
thinking
going
that
to
there's
take
a
a
human
little
being
shot
behind it.
dice from here and bring it over there, and you're still working. You'll be
So
happy. Still got
exactly.
a
So if you
job.
work in entertainment
Right.
and you're someone who's an electrician on movie sets, why not be an electrician in general? Like you don't have to just do it on movie sets because if that way, if you lose your job, you can always move your side hustle into your full-time hustle. And I think that's the interesting thing. It's like a lot of times people who are really good at carpentry, that before you know it, they're as a side hustle, they're doing some contract stuff. And next thing you know, they're a contractor and they're doing really well. So I think a side hustle can become a full-time hustle. You can write a book as a side hustle if you are really good at what you do and you want to tell a story. I don't think people realize how easy it is to write an ebook. And I'm not even talking about those ghost writers or things like that that people do too, but just writing a book and publishing it. I think anybody, if you have something to teach, and I think we all kind of do, whether that's in our personal lives or professional lives, take a moment to think about, what am I good at? What is something that my friends come to me with? What is something that when I do these things for people, they're really grateful? And wonder, are you getting paid for it? Because if not, maybe there is a side hustle for you. Maybe you can do something extra. And again, it's not going to change your life. No one's saying quit your job, but isn't if you had an extra, like to what she was saying about the Turo and the cars, an extra 3,000 a month, an extra 2,000 a month, that's a vacation. That's a chance for you guys to go and have an experience. That's a chance to do something really romantic. So a lot of times we're just kind of keeping our nose above water. And I think the side hustle thing, I want to hear more ideas from people, but it's a
Well,
great way to equalize.
I was going to say the one of the things that I think Hudson had sent me something about uh, waste removal, like
Oh,
pets.
oh, no, no, no. I want the mystery poop scooper.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
about the mystery part, but
I
I
haven't heard that.
actually have seen this business.
Oh, yes.
I've seen it here,
Same.
and my my son had lived in Alaska,
Yeah.
and what would happen is the the dogs would go do their business, and then as it started to warm up, all the ice and snow melted, and places were just loaded with it. So
Yeah.
these were companies. One of them had a great jingle, which I can't remember offhand, but it basically is pooper scooper as it thaws.
Listen, as we drive home, there's a little sign, and Alan and I saw the sign and thought we need to hire them. You saw the size of my dog, Scotty. We have
Yeah.
3 massive golden doodles. Well, 2 golden doodles, 1 golden retriever, and we're getting ready to put a pool in right now. And so we've got to like get rid of all that. We can't have people walking back there. So I'm going to be calling that mystery pooper scooper that shows up and gets rid of all of it because there's a lot now that the grass is growing. It's like
And
crazy.
how much education and skill do you need to do this gig? I'm thinking you could probably just go buy a picker upper
Yeah.
and just know where you're going to take it, I guess. And
I mean, look,
why not?
on top of that, there's also people like getting off the poop stuff for a second, guys. There's people who are had really good ideas for food, and and they have these like little meal packs that you cook yourself. And so again, someone had the idea of making proportioned meals of different types of styles, and then people
Right.
order, and that way
Oh
it's like
yeah, the ghost kitchen.
Oh, and the ghost kitchens. People are renting out their kitchens too for restaurants when they're not using it. I know for therapists, they may have a therapy suite and they'll just sublease it to other therapists on the weekends or in the evenings when they're not there. So there's always a way to get passive income coming in, no matter what you do for a living. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're listening to this. What are you doing as an extra side hustle? Definitely feel free to reach out to us and let us know. But it's there's a lot of things and it's a tough economy right now. And I actually think it's exciting because what I was starting to say before is I'm not a big corporation guy. I think in the past I didn't really realize how desensitized they were to human beings because I'm just watching these people right around the holidays get laid off, people who lost their homes get laid off. And it's like people just don't care, how long you've been there. And so this is such a great opportunity in this next era for anybody to be their own boss. And again, it's not easy to be your own boss because you've got to be accountable. You've got to put the tasks in place of what you're going to do and put a deadline and say,
I feel
okay,
like we're getting a little therapy session here while we're talking about the side hustle.
no, well, side
Maybe.
hustles only work if you're accountable, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people have great ideas, but it's like if you're going to write a book, what's your deadline? When are you going to have this stuff done by? And because when you work for yourself, it's different than working for a boss. And a side hustle is working for yourself, which means there's no one that can fire you. There's no one that can say that it has to be done today. You can just tell yourself, well, I'll get it done this weekend or something like that. So if this is something that's intriguing to you, you have to know your personality type and who are you going to use as an accountability partner if you're not accountable? And I think a lot of times
Hmm.
people do need to be in partnerships just to have another person to say, okay, I'll have this done by Friday. And then you really do have it done by Friday and things move on. Because a lot of people have great ideas, but they don't really execute.
How
How
many
much
times
you
have
know
you
you
watched?
just yeah.
How many times have you watched Shark Tank and went, "Oh, I thought of that years ago"?
Yep,
Oh
And
exactly.
there's
yeah.
so many steps that person took to get to where they are with that same idea, and you get nothing. for great ideas. We gave away $1 million ideas all the time on the show.
Well,
We
they
would
always
have
say like
Do you
in therapy.
remember Scotty, do you remember my Wanna Bang kiosk?
okay,
Probably not. You probably zoned
please,
out on that one.
please tell me about this again.
Okay. So I have, because remember when we lived in Hawaii, Ala Moana, which was our shopping center, beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful place to shop. They always had little kiosks out, and
Sure.
people were always trying to push on you some kind of creamy lotion or whatever. But I always remember having to go to Ala Moana because that's where my hairdresser, T from W Salon, was. And I'd have to bring my kid in for a bang trim because he had long hair and he only just wanted the front cut. And so I was like, God, every time I got to go, $25 to get a bang trim. I might as well open a little salon called Wanted Bang, where you walk up, you got a hairdresser, and you can get a bang trim. And after saying it out loud a couple of times, I thought, oh, that sounds really bad. Here you are as a mom, taking your kid up to the kiosk that in big bright letters, colorful, one and bang. So I had that idea many, many years ago, back in
Did
2001.
you see this on Shark Tank? Is that where you're going?
No, I never saw it on Shark Tank.
You know,
I can't
There's
believe
still time, Hudson. There's still
well, look,
there's
time.
there's,
still
but to
time
your
to
point,
do it.
Hudson, there's a place that took that idea, except for nails, and it's called Get Nailed, and they actually made it. But it's true. I remember as the therapist them telling us when a person has an idea, I think you have like, I want to say it's like 10 or 15 seconds, and excuse me if I'm wrong about that, that if you don't mark it, if you don't write it down, which is a marker, or tell someone about it, which is a marker, you'll forget it. But the first step is always write it down. And then at least you've planted a seed. And then step two, obviously, is to do something with it. But I think a lot of times people have these great ideas. And to your point, Scotty, they get on, they watch it on Shark Tank, someone else is doing it. And they're like, that's my idea. But they forget exactly there's doers that do, and there's watchers that watch. And the doers that do will succeed. And the people who watch and criticize and poo-poo things, they'll sit on the sideline and watch these other people because the world is not really full of doers. And I think that's what we all have to remember.
What do you think about, and since you're an entrepreneurial type, those inventors sites, where you go and you basically let
Oh, I know
someone
what
else, because
you get your patent and things like that,
yeah,
right?
I'm so skeptical that they're ripping people off of, they're taking the most from that idea. So
Okay,
what is the safest or best way to go about an idea if you have one?
Alan can give you really good, like he can tell you some crazy stories because his dad invented something.
Post-it notes?
No, he invented something really big. Yeah, no, now, all right, suck it, Scotty, suck it.
The whole
But
country that he
his
got
dad
that
is an
was,
inventor,
That
and
was
that
Romeo and Michelle.
yeah.
All right, what did
and
he invent?
he invented. You tell the story, but make it quick, Alan.
Okay,
We
I'll be
all
quick. So
day.
my dad invented.
We're not on your hourly rate here,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah. No, I understand. So
We
my,
couldn't
my
afford
dad was
you.
an
We
entrepreneur
can't.
and he was a dentist, but he also invented products. And so he invented this thing called the Orapic, which looked like a pen but had a hook, and it was instead of toothpicks, so you don't get splinters after you go to a restaurant to get the food out between your teeth. And
Right.
women could he had a small version that people could put in their purse or their pocket. And he invented temporary fillings if you're on vacation. He invented a bunch of different dental products. And it eventually became something that became a side hustle to a full time, and he left dentistry, and that was his job. But it is possible, to your point, but patents are very expensive. And I've always said, you don't want to spend a lot of money before you make money. And so getting patents for things is not cheap. Even with AI, if you do LegalZoom or things like that, which is better than getting a regular lawyer or patent attorney, you're still going to spend some money on the front end. So to me, most people, like I said, struggle with accountability. And if you're going to do that, have a partner. Make sure whether it's somebody else who's helping with the money or the idea, but make sure that you're actually going to execute what you're saying you're going to do. Because I think a lot of people have great ideas that just sort of peter out.
But that's not what he was asking you.
Yeah.
Are those sites safe? That's what he wants to know.
I would not go and
No.
let somebody else take my idea. I think if I really, really wanted to save up and do the patent the right way or the copyright the right way, I would do it that way and own it myself. But that's just me personally because I don't like working for people. And I think you have to sort of look at, are you a person who would do it on your own? If you're a person who would not do it on your own, then maybe, Scotty, that's a great idea because it's better than not doing it at all.
Well, and it's not a good idea unless they come on as a sponsor, and then we totally believe that this is the way to become a. Okay, maybe not.
What was it?
Yeah.
What were some of the, do you remember any of the ideas that we had that we did and somebody went out and
I'm
did it?
I'm never gonna remember.
I
My
know we
mind
had
doesn't
so
work.
many.
My mind doesn't work that way.
You guys,
You have
I
to
know.
kind of refresh
you
me.
guys remember during
We used to
COVID?
talk about the ideas live on the air, and then
And we
next
would
thing
just
you know,
say, "There's another $1 million."
Yep.
and then here's another free million. I used to give away, I used to come up with these crazy words, and I never have gotten over to this day. I came up with the word scrodazzle, and you know that, Scotty. I invented that word.
I don't, is anyone fighting you over that?
Nope.
It's
Okay.
in the Urban Dictionary, and I didn't get credit for it. And
Oh, is it?
somebody took it, yes, from Hawaii. So, with that being said,
Yeah.
that was my word. I did the first scrodazzle live on the air. I bedazzled Fernando Scro.
Okay, all righty.
I'm just
You
saying. I'm
don't
just
have
telling
to
you like it
explain
is.
what it is. I
Yeah.
think we can put together what that word means.
Yes, probably.
Okay.
But what if you're really good at barbecue or you're really good at baking? I mean, I think I saw during COVID a bunch of people who wanted to be bakers, including a
I
friend of
got it.
mine. And
I'm
she
going to
was
tell you.
making cake pops. She was making, and she just created a page on Facebook and started selling through her page, and she got the
You
website.
don't even need that any longer. Do you want me to tell you why?
Why?
What's available to you now? So if you are someone, here's a great side hustle. If you love to cook, you don't need to have a license. You don't need to have the health inspector come by. You can now cook straight out of your kitchen and set it up with DoorDash. I have a friend. I was getting my nails done. We were sitting there, and the nail tech was ordering food. And somebody had said, "Oh, you got to try this guy. He cooks out of his kitchen." And it's whatever he puts on the menu that day that he's making, whether it's paninis, whether it's known as meatballs. He'll put up 3 items and he'll sell it through DoorDash, and he cooks it up that morning. And that's his side hustle. And he's making good money doing that. So you don't need a license. You don't need to have a profession. You don't need a ghost kitchen. You can do it directly now, depending upon the state that you're in.
Yeah.
I believe in North Carolina, you're able to do that. How crazy is that?
That's crazy.
I have so many questions about the legality of that or accountability if someone gets sick or
What
even
if
if
you
they
get
don't and
botulism?
they don't, but they claim they do. I mean, if you remember when we were working in Hawaii, like a Hawaii 5 they
Yeah.
had their what do you call it? There's a word for it, but basically their food as you stop for the
Craft
meal.
services.
Craft services, thank you.
Yeah.
And there would be all kinds of leftover food. And one time we were filming downtown, and I said, "Can I take some of this to the homeless people over there?"
Yeah.
And because what are you going to do with it? And he goes, "Well, we have to throw it away, and we can't let you take it." And I said, "Why not?" So he goes, "We would want to do that too, but it's illegal because we could be held accountable if something happens to those people because
Wow.
they're not being employed here."
I have a feeling that a lot of shit's changed over the years. You know what I mean? Because I remember that's right. I forgot about Scotty B working on Hawaii 5 That was crazy. He worked
Yeah,
on.
no, I hear what you're saying, Scotty, and I can understand like exactly. I don't think I'd want to just eat food that has not been inspected or anything like that. But it's like, what if you're a produce company? And have you guys seen that thing where they sell like misshapen fruits and vegetables? They're fine, but they just have weird shapes to them, or that they didn't come out
No.
normal. And so you can buy this stuff and get it for like half the price. And somebody had the idea instead of throwing it away or just giving it away to sell it at half the price. And so look, I think there's a lot of creative ways that people really think about what they're good at to make extra money doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying, like I can look at Hudson's closet right now. She probably could use that closet organizer, and I saw the van down the street a couple days ago. But there really are, a lot of opportunities for people if they're hardworking, ambitious, and accountable. And I think that's the word I want to stress to people if you're going to do side hustles is you got to be accountable. You have to
Yeah,
set
you have to
aside
hold
time.
yourself
You
accountable.
have to know on a budget what you're going to spend, where you should be, what set steps of a
I will
business.
tell you this, that even for us, the three of us, okay,
Yep.
Alan is used to this because he is a therapist and he's self-employed. He has to make his hours, although he has schedulers and things like that, you know, but he has to hold himself accountable. We have to now officially hold ourselves accountable. We now are recording this podcast, and okay, so we have to be on our, no matter what. It's just like a job, even though we're not getting paid every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. we're recording our podcast. It's set in stone. Even if we're tired and we don't feel good, we have to still do it just like a regular job. You know what I mean? And so
Well,
it's
yeah. I mean, if you're trying to build an audience that can actually rely on you, you can't just put out a podcast once every couple months or they won't rely on you. You won't be a
no,
part
that's
of
how
their
they
day.
fail. Even if you had
And
good content, because people
exactly.
like to binge. They like to binge hard. I want to tell you about another one that I thought was really interesting was the aside from there was a virtual mourner. Have you heard about that as a side hustle?
No.
It's a good
The virtual
idea.
mourner, they're paid to attend virtually to boost your attitude. So they just show up. Like so if you want to be sad, they'll be sad with you virtually on a Zoom call. It's
Oh,
almost
well,
like another coaching thing, but if you need somebody to feel your sadness, they'll sit there and feel your sadness on a Zoom call.
Now, as a professional, Alan, just making people feel heard, is there value to that?
it's true. It's when she said mourner, I was thinking about people who have a funeral and no one shows
Oh
up
no,
and
no,
how
no.
sad that would be. It's like, oh my God, if you have a
Yes.
family, you'd want to pay some extra people just for the embarrassment of it. But to your point about that empathy, when people talk about AI a lot, and there is AI therapists, there's a lot of different platforms people are kind of going to, and I'm not going to name them here because they're my competition, but there's lots of ways that people can have text therapy or AI therapy.
But it's
But
not real.
but
It's
it's
not human.
not
They're not
what
seeing
you're saying
things.
is, yeah, it's a human being. And if you're talking about something of meaning and consequence in your life, and you're looking into the eyes of a human being who is there with you, then it feels real. And I think a computer can't just, it can give you interventions, it can tell you, statistically what the best thing to do is, but they can't look you in the eye and just feel what you're feeling. And so I'm grateful that AI hopefully won't replace me, but I do think there is something to be said for what she's saying about a virtual mourner, because I think sometimes we don't have friends that are going to be with us when we're sad. And like, and Hudson knows this, I use that word mirror all the time because the people around us are mirrors. If we're excited and they're looking back at us excited, then we know we have permission to be excited. If we're sad and they're mirroring that back, then we have permission to
Mm.
feel what we're feeling. And so I do know that if you don't have people in your life, interpersonal friends or a relationship or kids that live with you anymore,
So if you're
sometimes,
somebody who has empathy, listen, there
yeah.
I like if I feel like Pisces, the sign of Pisces are very empathetic. I might be wrong. I know you don't believe in the sign thing, Scotty, but I believe that, if you're somebody who really d does have that empathy, it could be a thing. It could be another little side gig for you to do. Again, we're talking about the reinvention of the side hustle and the things. Another one that is interesting to me, I mean, and this is getting really creative and out of the box, and you can add on or we can just wrap it up. But selling air from famous places, like the bathroom of the Troubadour in Los Angeles. I mean, I could tell you, I have captured air hanging out with 21 Pilots because I have in the Troubadour. I could totally sell that air. Here it is. Remember once I sold a quarter that I held between my butt cheeks for $50? Somebody bought that. Do you remember that back
Well,
on the day?
we sold a lot of really odd things. I do remember that because sometimes it's like eBay. There was a lot of
Yeah.
that going on where, a toast that has Elvis in it or
Yep.
whatever. I mean, a chip that's shaped a certain way.
We sold
So
a doll of you.
there
What do you,
is,
yeah, a napkin that was used by a celebrity or something like
yeah,
that.
there's a market for that. I don't know how you prove that it is, but I think having it's kind of like the pet rock back in the old days.
Right.
It was just a goofy thing and it caught on. So,
But I
You know,
yeah.
remember, but I
the
remember
next
watching.
thing I want to do, honestly, because I'm going to see Teddy Swims. I love him. Do you like Teddy Swims,
Oh
Scotty?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I love him. And we had like the greatest interview together. I'm seeing him next week. I'm going to ask him to breathe into a jar and then we'll put it up and sell it.
But on the thing, I
Teddy's
don't
the
know if you guys
best.
have seen this show called King of Collectibles, and there was this guy, and he started off selling soccer stuff or what they would call football outside of America, and they didn't realize like what a big marketplace of collectibles this was. And
Mm.
next thing you know, it went from a side hustle to his full-time hustle, and a very successful one at that. And so when we're talking about side hustles here, there's the weird ones. Yeah, you could sell pictures of your feet, you could put a quarter in your butt, you could, there's a lot of things that could maybe pay on a one-time basis. But I love when people sort of think of it as a parallel and they go to their regular job, but they have discipline, and it's like you're rolling marbles down sort of a hill, And eventually, the side hustle becomes your full-time hustle and you are your own boss. And I think that's the greatest thing. If that's something that you can do, is work for yourself and have that freedom to be able to make those decisions in the world about your employment and your livelihood. Because I see so many people where it's really out of their control right now, the pay cuts or the layoffs. And so it's a great time to start something, but don't just think of something silly. Think of something that you're really good at and be accountable. And if you need a partner to make sure you do it, then find a partner. But
Yeah.
inevitably, if you stick with something for 6 months to a year, there's a good chance it's going to get real. And eventually, maybe it replaces or earns more than your regular job. So keep that in mind.
Well, I think, people always say if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day of your life or whatever. So it's kind of like that. You're saying, like, if you have a passion for something, maybe it's a hobby. Like I've gotten into woodworking and doing creating things around the house, and I'm actually enjoy that. I go into like this
Yeah,
zen while I'm doing it, and it's a different place I see what I've accomplished, and there's a sense of satisfaction there. And
Yep.
if I could turn something that I enjoy into this side hustle, then that's a big old win for me. And then maybe people will like it. And if not, I still had fun doing it. So we'll
that's sort of,
see.
yeah.
Yeah,
You,
that's a
you
good
know,
point.
and just because if one side hustle doesn't work, don't get discouraged. Because even for me, you know me, I've always been into fashion. I wanted to do this whole store thing. Unfortunately, we're in an economy right now where even my favorite store, Ross, is closing all their locations. No one's buying shit. And, to launch this store was really hard because the things I like aren't inexpensive. They're expensive to buy and to put out all this money in inventory and build a website and everything else. And this is all even before opening a brick and mortar. It was really costly. And and even with the following, I have a really big following on social media. The thing that I got from most people is right now I just don't have money. I can barely pay my bills. And so I'm going to put it on the back burner and wait, because I still love fashion. And at some point, I love dressing people. Scotty, even I love dressing you up, you know? I mean, I bought you so many rooster shirts and rooster hats.
I don't know how much money you think you spent on things I never wore just
So
because of the moment of
much.
me opening and seeing it.
Yes, I did. But you did wear that leather bracelet for quite some time that I
I
got you.
did. I like that one.
Yeah, and you looked cool. It made you look really cool.
Well, that
No,
was
but
the
Hudson,
one
you could
time.
you could be a radio personality, you could be a stylist, you could be there's so many different things. And even myself, I could be an author, a therapist, a podcaster. And
You
again,
are an author. You've written a book, and now
I
you
know, I know.
more.
That's the point. Is,
Yeah.
is that is that we
Speedo
all have
model.
we all have to do other things.
Keto model for sure.
No, I
Scotty,
no, I think I hated
keto
being
in the
with
back.
bosses. I hated being unappreciated. I hated that other people always took credit for the things that I did well. And so there is something to be said for stepping back from something that you're proud of and looking at it and knowing you did it and that somebody just paid for it. And it's a great feeling. And I
Yeah.
think for anyone listening here, working for yourself and getting that validation for who you are, what you can do, and how you made someone else's life better in some way, it's a great feeling, whether it's somebody writing about this podcast or somebody writing about a book or somebody, writing about therapy I did with them a couple of years ago. You know that it meant something, and I think that there's something to be said for that. You don't always feel that when you work for a company.
And I think as well, I mean, it also is important as you see these people giving it a try to give support,
Yep.
to say a nice word, because it's scary to put yourself out there and try something on your own. So lift others up, and I think it lifts everybody,
It
even yourself
totally
up.
does. And
No,
that
there's a kid's book, Fill a Bucket, exactly to what Scotty's saying, but playing it into this podcast, meaning that, we can post stuff about this podcast and people might like the post, but if they really want to help, follow this podcast, give this podcast 5 stars, be a subscriber because it doesn't cost you anything. And I think for most people I know who have these side hustles, they start a new business, they're like, follow my page. And I always do. And I think it costs me nothing to give a heart or to give a follow because we all need people behind us to build our businesses. And again,
Yeah.
no one's asking people for money. We're just asking people to support us. And I wish more people did that with each other.
well, there are so many different little side hustles that we didn't get a chance to get into, but maybe we gave you a little hope, a little glimmer that you can do a side hustle. You just got to figure out what you're really good at. What are you passionate about? That's really what you got to put into it is the passion, what you got behind you. And, we're always here you can always reach out to us. Again, another reason to make sure you follow our pages on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, which we're Mike and Mind. And I got,
Which brings up
yes.
the first in story.
First in story. Our
Sorry.
first in story is a Mr. Grimace. His name is Jason Hintz. Does that ring a bell to you, Scotty?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Grimace. He's from Hawaii, and
Yeah.
he's been a long time listener for many, many years. He was first in story this week. He's from Honolulu, Hawaii. Just got back from a nice trip from Japan. I was looking at all of his photos.
Mm.
But thank you, Jason. And he
Hey,
actually
man.
wrote a perfect example is liking something and giving that subscription doesn't cost you anything. It's kindness. This dude is filled with aloha. He not only subscribed, he wrote the most beautiful words about us, Scotty, on our first episode of Mike and Mind on Apple. And I feel so touched by it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
again, connecting with everybody, reconnecting with everyone and new people who we're getting to connect with. You're going to get to know all three of us. It's just the most amazing feeling. It really is. So, Jason Hintz, thank you for being first in story. Follow him on Instagram. His name is Mr. Grimace, and send you all the love and aloha. We're Mike and Mind. I'm Hudson Hot.
I'm Scotty B.
And I'm Alan. And thanks for listening, guys.
See ya.